Okay, so notes. Still doing circles. So to recap, we've had a circle whose angle starts at the center. We call that a central angle, whose angle is equal to its arc. So we know that this angle is equal to this arc because it starts at the center. We've also had an inscribed angle. And an inscribed angle goes all the way across the circle. Where we know that the arc is bigger. And this is an inscribed, meaning it's inside, angle, where your arc is equal to 2 times the value of your angle. So this would be the angle, and this would be the arc. Thank you, Amy. So if this angle is 50, what would the arc be?
100.
100. Good. Okay, so 2 times that value. And one student summarized it very well yesterday in the afternoon. He said if you want to go from the angle to the arc, and we're going to multiply by 2. So we're going from smaller to big, so small to big. We're going to multiply by 2. If we're going to go from the arc to the angle, we're going to divide by 2. Okay. So that means we're going from the big to the small. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit of vocabulary for a minute. We'll need the first one is a chord. So let's say that's the center. Well, this is a line that goes through your circle, but not through the center. So it would be something like that, from one edge to the other. Actually, I'm gonna make it red. This is a chord, C-H-O-R-D. And this does not go through the center. The one that goes through the center is called a diameter. The next one is a secant, kind of written as secant, but secant are the line segments that go through and out to the center, out of the circle. So these are lines that extend outside the circle. And then there's just one more. And it's called a tangent. Now, this is not the same kind of tangent as the Socotoa, that kind of tangent. This is a circle tangent. And I'll show you what that looks like. We have a circle. And we have this line. And it can be anywhere on the circle, but it's going to just touch the circle at one point. Just one point. One point only. This is a tangent. And it touches the circle. In only one point. Okay, that one point is called point of tangency. We don't really refer to that too much, but it's just where that one point is. That's the point of tangency. That's where the circle crosses or intersects the tangent. And that line is perpendicular to the radius. So there's only going to be one radius that goes to that point of tangency. And we know that they are perpendicular. So let me give you a minute to finish copying that. So now let's look at some examples. So we're going to have different scenarios. This one is going to be a tangent and a chord. Tangent. And a chord. So here's our tangent. And here's our chord. A tangent is actually a line that goes on forever. And if I were to ask you to find this angle right here, you would need certain information. That angle X is equal to 1/2 of its arc. Now that's the arc that it intercepts or matches, and that would be this arc. So if I told you that this arc is 50, what would the angle be? Go ahead and put it in the chat box. This is a really easy opportunity for participation. What would it be? Put it in the chat box.
The bottom one, right?
Okay, so most of you got it. There were a couple answers that were incorrect. If you put 25, you were absolutely correct. A couple of you were close. So the arc right here is 50. So we just say the measure of angle X is 1/2 of 50. So angle X is equal to 25. And what that looks like when you're showing work is 50 divided by 2 is 25. That's it. Okay. You let people finish copying, finish writing. And we'll move to the next one. Anybody still writing? Okay. Page 2. Here's a different scenario where we're going to be given 2 chords. So circle. Two chords. And the formula for this is that the angle we want to find is equal to 1/2 of arc 1 plus arc 2. Yeah, arc 2. Okay, so here's what, if I wanted to ask you to find this angle, that would be our X. Well, if you remember back from last semester, we were talking about vertical angles. Vertical angles would be like this and this side are equal. Well, that would be, these would be the arcs that match both of these. Okay. So let me give you some numbers to put with that. Let's say that this one, this arc is 120, and this arc is 100. Okay. So those are the two arcs, arc 1 and arc 2. See if you can plug it in and see what you'd get before I do it. So up here, we took the two arcs, we added them together, and then divided by 2, and we got 110. So we'll do the same thing here. Okay, so adding the two arcs together, 258 dividing by 2, we get 129. Right. So the last one is two secants. So this scenario is 2 secants, or it also works for 1 secant and 1 tangent. Good, awesome. So this scenario works for 2 secants or 1 secant and 1 tangent. So let's draw circle. And let's look at 2 secants. I'm going to call this arc 200 and this arc 80. My circles and stuff are never going to scale, so sorry. We want to find this angle, the one out here in like the tail. We want to find the tail. So that has a very similar formula to the last one. So this one, the angle is equal to 1/2 the big arc minus the small arc. So visually, we could see which one's bigger. This one's going to be bigger, and this one's going to be smaller. Now, when you're asking yourself which arcs to use, it's kind of like shooting a dart. If it were to shoot this way, it would come across this arc and this arc, and just kind of keep going. Okay, so those are the two arcs that you're going to use. So if we fill these in, our angle is equal to 1/2. The bigger arc is a bigger number. So 200 minus the smaller arc, which is 80. And go ahead and simplify. Good. Okay. So when you subtract these, we get the angle is equal to 1/2 of 120. And half of 120 is 60. And I'd be done. These are pretty straightforward, guys. It doesn't take a lot. It's just plug in the numbers and get the answer. Plug in the number and get the answers. Now, this is when we had two secants and we were trying to find the angle. There is a scenario where you have to go in reverse. So this is the same stuff, but now we're going to go in reverse and find the arc. Okay, here we were finding an angle for the tail. Here we're going to find the arc. And I'll use one of the homework problems. This is number 25. So when you have, so they tell us that this arc is 172. And the tail in here, or the angle, is 60. It means we want to find this arc. What did they have to subtract in order to get the answer of 60? Okay, so we're going to use the same exact formula. So the angle is still going to equal 1/2. Let's do it this way. Let's kind of shorten this. The big arc minus the small arc. So we know the angle, and the angle always goes on the left. So the angle right here, and it always goes on the left. So we're going to plug in 60 equals 1/2. Now we're given the bigger arc. It could have been the smaller. It could be either one, but you have to put it in the place that it goes. So if the smaller arc was 172, we'd put it over here. But since the bigger arc is 172, we'll put it first. Minus the smaller arc, we'll call it X. Now before, when we did this, we just simplified and we got the answer. But this time, the X is inside the parentheses. So it means we have to get rid of the 1/2 first. How do we get rid of a divide by 2? Anybody? So we say it out loud. How do we get rid of a divide by 2? Okay, thank you for putting it in the chat box. Okay, multiply it to both sides was the response. So yes, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. That makes those cancel. This is what we wanted. We wanted to get rid of it. So now we've got 2 times 60, or 120, equals 172 minus X. And then solving our algebra equation now. I can subtract 172 on both sides. I get a negative 52 is equal to a negative x. And then we can divide both sides by -1, and 52 equals x. So that means that this arc is 52. So you can always check your answer. If I subtract these, 172 minus 52, I get 120, and half of 120 is 60. So that would be right. Okay. So anytime you're going in reverse, whether it's the other formula or this one, you need to multiply by 2 to get rid of the 1/2 and then solve. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do some problems from the actual worksheet. I still need lots of participation. So assignment number 21, number 1, we're looking for this angle. Go ahead and put your answer in the chat box. There's lots of easy opportunities to participate. And remember, if you don't know, you can just simply say IDK. At least I know you're awake and you're tracking with me. Thank you, Josh. Please. Yes, Alex, that'd be fine. Okay, good deal. Okay, so this is what we were doing yesterday and last week. Actually, just yesterday. But this arc is twice as big as the angle. So all we have to do is go 124, divide by 2, and you're done. This is where the arc is equal to 2 times the angle. Okay, so knowing that, let's do number 3 and number 5. So knowing number 1, let's do number 3 and number 5. Go ahead and put the answers in the chat box. Number 3, the answer for number 3 in the chat box. We're going to do it the same exact way because here's my arc and I want to find the angle. Good, good. Nice. Thank you. This is not about me doing your work for you. This is about you doing it and checking it and making sure you understand it as we go. Okay, nice. Beautiful. Okay, most of you are getting it. So this becomes 200 divided by 2. That's it. And the same thing here. Because we're going smaller, we're going to divide by 2 and get 57. If we had 57, we'd be multiplying by 2 to get the 114. Okay, So now look at your scenarios, look at your notes, and find the one that says two secants or a secant and a tangent, because this is our tangent right here. And that's our secant. Remember the tangent intersects the circle at one point of tangency, and the secant extends through the circle. So you're going to have your angle or your tail is equal to 1/2 the big arc minus the small arc. Whenever your tail's on the outside, you're going to be subtracting. If you're looking for your angle on the inside, you're going to be adding. That's how you can keep track of that. Number 8's a little tricky because we want, like on number 10, we wanted to find the angle that went with the 150 degree arc. So we took half. This time I want to find this angle, but that would mean I need this arc. I don't have that value. How could we find it? Anybody like to say it out loud? Or you
Subtract
can
200 by 360.
Nice, nice. Okay, because you know the whole circle is equal to 360, you can subtract off what we've got to get the leftover. So minus the 200 gives me 160. So sometimes, guys, you actually have to kind of think about it. You have to think about it. Now we have enough information to find the answer to our angle. So we have to go this way. So half of 160 is equal to 80. Okay. So just like that one, we have number 6. So same idea. Put your answer in the chat box. Put your answer, please, in the chat box. Finding the arc like we did before. So 360 minus the 282. That gives me 78. So now this is 78. And we take half of that to get the angle. So 1/2 of 78 equals 39. And you're done. Good job. Okay. Now number 4 and number 2, we have our different scenario of 2 chords. If you remember, the 2 chords is where we add the 2 arcs together and divide by 2. So this one, our angle is going to equal 1/2 of arc 1 plus arc 2. So if your angle's in the middle, we're going to add, just like that cross sign, kind of like right there. So we're going to add. And so go ahead and fill in your numbers. Arc 1 is 105 and arc 2 is 55. That's going to give us our angle in the middle. And if you think about it, it doesn't matter if it's on this side or this side because they're vertical angles, and the vertical angles we know to be equal. So Dan has got it. Dalia, good. You're not going to know if you really understand unless you're trying these with us. And it's like doing free homework. Because all you're doing is you're doing it in class, which many of you have said that you appreciate. And I thank you for that, the kind words. And but if you don't do it, you're basically just wasting your time because you're in class anyway. Might as well write it down and get credit for it. Okay, a couple more. I only have like 5 responses out of 16 people. Okay. So our angle is equal to 1/2 arc 1, which is 105, plus arc 2, 55. So 1/2 of 160 is equal to 80. Go ahead and try number 2. Go ahead and try number 2. Make sure that you're adding and not subtracting, and put your answer in the chat box. Good. Okay, good. Good. And this was actually one of our example problems. So your angle is equal to 1/2 203 plus 55. 1/2 of 258 does indeed give us 129. Okay. So let's move over to the back side. We do the same thing. Most of these are the ones that have a tail. Okay. So we're going to do the angle is equal to 1/2 the big arc minus the small arc. Okay. So go ahead and plug your numbers in and put your answer in the chat box. So our angle is equal to 1/2. Our bigger arc, which is obviously bigger than 60, is 158 minus 60. Okay, 158 minus 60 is 98. So we have half of 98, which is equal to 49. And you're done. Okay. Number 13, same problem, same type of problem. So it's 15 and 17. So let's do 13, and then we're going to jump down a couple problems. Okay, so your angle, your tail is equal to 1/2 your big arc minus the small arc. Go ahead and plug in the numbers and put your answer in the chat box. So let's look at 19, where if I were to start to write this down, I would say that the angle is equal to 1/2 the big arc minus the small arc. No problem. Well, it's 1/2. This one's obviously bigger than that one would be. But what's that value? Anybody have any ideas?
120.
How do you know? What'd you do?
Because I subtracted 240 from 360.
Awesome. Yep, that's it. Because if you remember, the whole circle is 360. So 360 minus the 240 will give me the 120. Okay. So now I can finish the problem. Sometimes we have to stop and think about, okay, I'm missing something. How do I find that? Okay. And then use what we've learned before. So we have half of 120, which is simply 60. Okay. Let's jump over to number 20. Put number 20 in the chat box. So we're going from the arc to the angle. Put the answer in the chat box. And if you don't know, you can say that too. Thank you, Octavia. That's correct. Yeah, good. So number 18, 1/2 the big arc minus the small arc. The bigger number usually is pretty obvious. Josh, I think you did 14, but that's okay. We'll do that one in a minute. We're actually doing 18. That's okay. You're good. So you're gonna get 94, 1/2 94, which is 47. Okay, put the answer for number 16 in the chat box. Bring you 16 and 14 and call it done for today. Good. Okay, so don't forget on number 14, we're going to subtract. You guys put your answer for 16 in the chat box. That's a pretty easy one. Even if that's the only one you got the whole day. This is kind. At least you know you have something. Good. Nice. Okay. Okay. Yes, the answer is 65 because 130 divided by 2 is 65. You're done. That's it. Okay. Like I said, a lot of this doesn't have to have a lot of work. I just need, even if I saw half of 86, and I know you subtracted those, I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with just answers. Okay. So on 14, the angle or the tail out there is going to be 1/2 of 165 minus 105. So subtracting those, I get 60. So 1/2 of 60 equals 30. And even if that's what I saw, that's showing work. 1/2 of 60 equals 30. Done. Okay. Before you go completely, anybody had any questions on yesterday's assignment? Okay.